What makes for a good interrogator?
I think the best interrogators are people who have an empathy and understanding for the person that they're trying to get information from. And in the vast majority of cases, the easiest way to get information from someone is to be nice to them. And I think a prisoner arrested by a foreign power in jail who can be questioned by someone who speaks his language, who knows his culture, who knows where he came from, who understands him, that's the person who I think is most likely to get information from them. However, there has to be, I think, a calculating aspect to that personality as well. And there are people who become extremely skilled, not just at reading the people they're interviewing, but also manipulating them. And I think that you need a clever, empathetic, calculating individual. Those are your best interrogators.
All of those qualities, but also time as well, right? You have to have a lot of time if you're going to make it work. Time
is a luxury, and most of the time you have it. There are times when you don't, and the methods have to become very blunt. But I think that's, one of the factors that impinges on how to approach somebody.
About a half a year before he ran for the leadership of the Liberal Party of Canada, Michael Ignatieff, who of course now is a member of Parliament for the Liberals, wrote a piece called "If Torture Works" for Prospect magazine. It was a very controversial piece, and he took a lot of heat for it. I want to just read an excerpt from that and then consider what it was that he was trying to say. Michael, if you would, let's bring this up. Clear thinking about torture is not served by collapsing the distinction between coercive interrogation and torture. Both may be repugnant, but repugnance does not make them into the same thing. If coercion and torture are on a moral continuum, at what point on the continuum does queasiness turn to revulsion? Can you answer that question, Rick?
No, that's
tough, isn't it?
Well, that is the big question. Yeah. It's not can you waterboard? It's should you waterboard, and it should you use these techniques, not can you. So and that line, it's really hard to define.
Well, let's try.
People always say, well, what is the difference between coercive when does coercive torture end, and when coercive interrogation end and torture begin? I don't know. I mean, I have my own thoughts of it. It's like pornography. You can't really define it, but you know it when you see it. I would know torture when I saw it. It's something that causes lasting, permanent physical damage. Like if you look at Senator McCain, obviously he was tortured.
Well, let's go through it. I've got a bit of a list here, and I want to see. Mark, again, I want to start with you. Deception. Tell us the story about the Israeli interrogator, and he's got a row of hooded men in front of him.
Right, and he, none of them can see, and he announces, all right, everybody who is willing to help me, who's willing to cooperate, raise their hands, and we can clear you out of here right away. And he says, okay, there's 7 of you. No one has raised their hand. He says, okay, get these 7, let's get them out of here. And that leaves everyone who isn't. No one comes over to get them, so they think, why am I sitting here, hanging tough when these guys are all getting out? So he found that to be a very effective way of coercing, in some cases, everybody down the hall.
Now, Ramin, is that torture?
Yeah, I think so.
You think that's torture?
Yeah, it could be.
It's very deceptive, but is it torture?
Well, it brings the suffering to the person, the psychological suffering. I mean, I think psychological suffering is also part of torture.
Melissa, would that be torture in your book?
I would not. I mean, I have not studied these questions enough to have a clear view about where to draw the boundary line, but my intuition is that that is not torture. I think one metric I use in trying to think about this distinction is what we would permit within criminal interrogation procedures. And I just don't know enough about the place of interrogation in overall criminal investigation procedures.
Okay, we're just trying to figure out. I'm sort of going to survey all of them.
But that's one way of drawing the line is, would that kind of deception be permissible within the Canadian rule of criminal law, and in criminal law?
Mark, would you say that was torture? That deception? No? And I know you wouldn't either.
No, that in fact deception is used by police. It's been upheld several times.
Okay. How about yelling at a detainee? Screaming in his face. Torture?
No.
Could be, but it depends on the circumstances.
Could be.
Could be.
Certainly is.
Certainly is.
Yes.
We're seeing quite a range of opinion here.
Well, I mean, I've experimented it and experienced it, and I think it could be. It depends how harsh they are with you when you're interrogated.
Okay. How about isolating a prisoner for up to 30 days? Rick, is that torture?
No, but even the Army Field Manual requires a general officer signature to do it.
Mark?
It's a form of torture, a mild form, but yes.
Mild. Okay.
I would say that is definitely a form of torture and not mild.
That's definitely a not mild.
Definitely, because it can push you towards suicide.
Prolonged interrogation, say 20 hours at a time. Torture?
I guess I'm the broken record. No.
Well, we have the broken records, if you like,
Well,
at either
okay.
end. You're both let's just say you're both consistent, not necessarily broken records. Mark?
Can be, but remember, I'm the one who refused to draw a distinction between coercion and torture.
Okay. Melissa?
Yes.
It is? Ramin, I think I know what you're going to say.
Yes.
For all of them. We've already hit your line, haven't we? We hit
Yes.
your line a long time
You
ago.
did,
Okay.
yes.
Removal of clothing. Is that torture?
It could be.
Okay, we're getting close to the line for you now.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Exposure to let me revisit that for a second. Why would removal of clothing be considered torture? Why are you entertaining the notion that it could be on this where you haven't in the past?
Depending on who you're interrogating, I mean, that could be a real traumatic experience that really doesn't get you much. It generally would work against you. I'm thinking in the Middle Eastern culture, and they've tried it at Guantanamo. It didn't work very well. They would bring in female interrogators and strip down a detainee. They found that it was actually counterproductive. I don't know if it's really torture or not. It just doesn't work.
Mark, more torture or more humiliation in that case?
It could be torture. It's extreme humiliation. Again, it depends on the person and the circumstances.
Sleep deprivation?
Yes.
Yes. A yes for sleep. I think Menachem Begin wrote in his book that sleep deprivation was far more torturous than starving him or not permitting him a drink for days and days and days. Yeah, okay. I know where you are on this, Ramin. I don't even have to ask. How about exposure to cold weather or water? Rick?
Yeah, it definitely could be.
Mark?
Absolutely.
Melissa?
Classic French technique in Algeria.
Ramin?
Well, I think it's been practiced out of some prisons also. I mean, some high schools, you have people, they take cold showers. And so not necessarily. I think when you humiliate people is more of a torture than when you strip them down, I think is even worse than this one.
Well, we are into water, and water leads us to waterboarding. And Rick is nodding his head already because he knows I want to talk to him about it because you've experienced it.
Yes.
Tell me the circumstances under which you experienced. First of all, tell us what it is.
Well, it can be a variety of things. Waterboarding is the generic word everybody uses to something that invokes the drowning, the fear of drowning. It invokes the gag response, which is involuntary. You have no control over it. So when someone forces water down your throat, put your head underwater, they all accomplish the same thing. It forces that gag reflex and it forces you to ingest water into your lungs, into your sinuses or whatever, or you can just have it introduced. But it makes you feel like you're drowning.
Under what circumstances did you experience
Okay,
that?
I was trained, and when I was years ago, we were talking 38 years ago when I joined the service, I was going to be an aircrew member. We were conducting reconnaissance missions. We were trained in all the techniques that might be used against us, and they did it to us to expose us to the types of treatment. So sleep deprivation, cold, yelling, claustrophobia, all of these techniques we've been talking about were given to us in small doses.
How long?
And I'm not going to say I was waterboarded, for minutes or something. I probably all told about a minute, but I tell you, 35 seconds. With water pouring up your nose is not a very pleasant thing.